Hi folks, now we're going to start Module 2, which is all about crafting a compelling personal narrative and building your public profile. Martine here, back with your first lesson of this module, focused on framing yourself and your personal narrative. Your personal narrative is one of the most powerful tools that you're going to have in organizing, running for office, or connecting with your community, because it's really just telling folks who you are. So, what is a personal narrative? A personal narrative is a compelling story about who you are, why you care, and what you'll do. What that means is it's really giving folks an insight into you. What are your values? How do the issues that you care about impact you? And what are your solutions to fix them? It's a very quick introduction for folks to get a better sense of who you are and why they should care about the work that you're doing. So, why do we tell stories, and why is a personal story so important? It's because humans really love stories. Stories give us the ability to share our core values, and those values are what allow us to connect emotionally and as humans. It shows what you value and allows other folks to see themselves reflected in those values. Also, as humans, we've been wired for listening to stories for centuries. It's the way history was originally passed down. And stories are everywhere in theater, movies, music, art, and books. They're all just stories. So we're meeting people where they are and in a way that they understand how to ingest information. Stories also allow us to connect on a deeper emotional level that isn't solely based on data or logic. Humans are emotional beings, and when we're able to build that emotional connection, it allows us to retain information better. Utilizing emotions is key to a powerful connection. So, next, we're going to talk about how you should approach telling a story based on how people retain information. So, if you think about our head, this is where all the information pertaining to issues, data, logic, things that we know live. It's likely where we already have our predetermined opinions, viewpoints, or perspectives on information that we've received. So if you're trying to talk to somebody about an issue, let's say education, they may already have a preconceived notion or opinion on what they think about education or how education should be run. It's hard to connect with somebody when their opinion has already been solidified in their head. So, as you approach storytelling, I want you to think about the other two places where people really feel connection as humans, and that's in their heart and in their gut. In their heart is where our core values live, things like fairness, justice, equality, family, and community. Those core values that really make up who you are as a person and help you direct and navigate how we approach our lives and the way in which we show up in the world. And so when you're talking about education, you may actually talk about education in the stance of fairness or equity or community before you actually talk about the issue around education. Similarly, once you've connected on a values level, you really want to lay out what is at stake for that person in this particular issue. And that's where the gut comes in. This is where we feel what is really at stake in our lives as it pertains to the issue we're talking about. So, if you were to say education is really important for our community because we want to make sure that our community has the ability to thrive, and what is at stake is if our education system isn't serving our community, then everybody in our community isn't going to have the best opportunity to succeed. So, then in that scenario, we've hit them in their heart first and then in their gut. And then finally, we would say, and that's why this particular piece of education policy is important to pass or not pass. You've got your foot in the door in connecting with them on their core values first, then you laid out what is at stake, and then finally you're coming in with whatever data or information about the issue is. This gives you a much better chance of connecting with folks who may be with you or who actually may be initially against you on a particular issue. Now, when you're thinking about your delivery, the why matters most. People connect to emotions and purpose, not just credentials. You may have all the credentials in the world, but if you can't see the emotion behind the work that you're doing or the purpose behind why you're called to do this work, it may be a moot point. So you want to lead with the connection to the community, connection to the issue, and the purpose about why you particularly are the person to be doing this work. Your why might be fixing the local school system, because you're a teacher and you've seen firsthand how the schools are failing students and teachers, and how much it can do harm to young lives if not fixed. And you know what works and what doesn't because you've seen what happens on the front lines of this issue. So, for this exercise, we want you to take a moment to write down what was the moment you knew you wanted to make a difference. This could have happened in elementary school, high school, college, even yesterday. But there was a particular moment that you decided, you know what, I'm going to get off the bench and step in and really make a difference. Pause this video and then come back when you've done that. Great. Now that you've remembered what that moment was, it's really going to help us in this next part as you think about structuring your personal story and your narrative. Now, when we say your personal narrative, we are not saying we need to know everything about your life from birth until now. What we are saying is we want to know what formulated or shaped your perspective of the world. We're going to give you a structure for how you should be thinking about sharing pieces of your story, because you're not going to have a lot of time or a lot of words to convey that key information. You'll need to be able to communicate your narrative within about a minute to 3 minutes. So I'm going to give you a quick cheat sheet here on what you should include. First, you're going to want to start with a hook. What is something that is going to capture your audience's attention? It could be an alarming fact, it could be a joke, if you're good at humor, or this could be a personal piece of your story that connects you to the community or the audience you're talking to. However you approach this, there should be something that really captures and draws the attention of the audience in. Next, you want to talk about what is the collective challenge that the community is facing or that the audience you're talking to is facing. What is the actual problem that we need to solve, or what is the thing that needs to be protected? Now, the important piece here is that this shouldn't be just a personal issue to you. This should be a collective issue that a lot of folks are facing in your neighborhood or in your community. For example, if the challenge is we really need to fix the streets because there are so many potholes that are causing car damage and accidents, you don't want to frame the challenge as, I keep having to replace my tires because of the potholes on our streets. The way that you may reframe this is, there are many neighbors that I know in our community who are having issues with the potholes on the streets. And that turns your particular issue into a collective challenge that is more inclusive of other folks. Next, you then want to lay out a choice. What is at stake for them? Again, this is where we hit them in the gut. What are the two different paths that we might take? If we don't take action, the roads and the streets continue to go into disarray and more potholes continue to ruin our cars. If we do take action, we can get city funding to fix the roads and streets, and then we all save money on car repair. Make the choice as clear as possible so there's no doubt in the audience's mind that they should take action because it benefits them. Lastly, you want to give them a call to action or a CTA. What can they do, and why is it urgent that they do it now? For example, maybe there's a vote coming up at your city council about funding and where the funding is going in your city. You may want to say, hey neighbors, we should show up to the city council meeting to let them know that we are very concerned about the disarray of our streets. That is a perfect call to action because the city council meeting has a timely deadline. It's happening on a particular day, which makes it urgent for them to take action now. And it gives them a tangible thing that they can do in the immediate. Now, in some instances, you may need to tailor your narrative to the audience you're speaking to. You'll want to adjust your narrative, but not necessarily the core of the information that you're giving about yourself. This is going to depend on the audience. For example, if you're talking to a local environmental group that might contribute to your campaign, you may want to emphasize the impact of your plans on green initiatives. What does the donor care about, and how do you connect their interest to the vision that you're trying to achieve? Or, if you were talking to other community members or voters, you may increase the focus on a problem and your solution and how that'll benefit the community. There is no one size fits all, but knowing your audience is going to be critical to ensuring that you're putting the audience at the center of your narrative and messaging. As you're thinking about messaging your narrative, you want to address the challenge in your narrative. And your primary focus is your connection to that challenge. Again, you want to be able to show folks who you are and how you are connected not only to the issue you're trying to solve, but how the community is also connected to that challenge. If you do decide to run for office, you'll want to lean into the things that you're for. But you'll also want to have an idea of how you're going to address the people who may be against you on your issues. There's always going to be opposition, and including that as part of your narrative after you've explained what you're for to create a contrast is going to be a really effective messaging tool. Consistency is key, so staying simple is better. A person isn't going to start remembering your message until they've heard it about 8 to 12 times, which means you're going to have to say that simple message over and over and over again. And that's how we learn. Repetition is key to retention of information. Your ability to stay consistent is really going to help your community and your audience and your constituents remember the critical information you are trying to communicate. To do this, it helps to be concise and explain things in plain language, avoiding acronyms or jargon whenever possible. Next, you're going to want to write it down. Your personal narrative should exist in a physical document and not just in your head. This will allow you to iterate and revise as you get more information in conversations with your community. The core of your story is likely not going to change, but maybe a couple words or how you deliver a phrase may change because it's not resonating better than other ones. Reference your narrative in everything you do. Whether you're just introducing yourself to somebody on the street or you're talking in front of a big crowd. This is really going to help you practice, but also build your profile and ensuring you're staying consistent. So remember, be authentic, connect with emotion, and be concise. As you're thinking about your story, keep it short. You want a hook, you want a collective challenge, you want a clear choice, and you want an opportunity for folks to take action. Keep your audience in mind and adapt the framing and messaging for the audience you're talking to in order to make it more connective and impactful. You'll find your personal narrative homework assignment in the homework section below this module. We're now about to feature a video about framing your narrative as a story of self. You can find that video in the next section of this module.